Hello class, this is Michelle Long, your instructor for English 110, English Skills for College Success at the Pennsylvania Institute of Technology, and I'm going to be reviewing with you today the organization that you should be following in creating and developing your comparison and contrast essay. So you've been given an assignment, and the assignment is to create a comparison and contrast essay. And the essay should be 2.5 pages total. That also includes a works cited page. So the bulk of your essay will be 1.5 pages along with a works cited page. Please do not hand in your paper unless you have a works cited page. Now, there are 4 choices that you can choose from. Online education versus traditional classroom, Twitter compared to Instagram, 2 religions, any religions, pop culture in the 60s and pop culture in the 90s. So you can choose one of those topics to compare, and that is how you can follow this demonstration on how to create a comparison contrast essay. If you want to follow along, you can also open up in your book page 263, which is chapter 15, using patterns of organization to develop essays. And 263 gives you some information on how to develop your point in a comparison contrast essay. It gives you an actual essay to look at with 6 paragraphs and then some additional information at the end of that section. You will be required to have at least 2 citations. One of them should be taken from our library's database. The reason why I'm having you do that is because of the demonstration given to you last week via PowerPoint presentation from the director of the library, and she gave you in that PowerPoint presentation all the information that you need in order to get information from one of our databases, ebooks, journals, magazines, anything like that from our particular library, which is why I would like you to have 1 citation from our library and then 1 external. External meaning that you can go to a website, you can, if you have a book at home that you want to use, if you want to rent a book, if you want to look at the newspaper online, if you wanted to look at any kind of journals or databases online, you can feel free to do that as well. The essay organization for comparison contrast is basically what you're doing is you're taking 2 points, you're taking 2 subjects, and then you're comparing the way that they're similar. You're also comparing the way that they're different. So as an example, online education versus traditional, the similarities are that you are getting information from your instructor, and the assignments and everything are given to you in an online format just as if you were getting it from a traditional classroom. The differences are that in a traditional classroom, you're actually in the classroom in a lecture format, learning with one-on-one FaceTime with the instructor personally. Online is you have no personal connection at all with the instructor physically, although you can through FaceTime or through different types of technologies, you can get some kind of connection or feedback from them, but which is also could be a similarity as well. But in contrast, it's online and traditional, and there are a lot of differences, more differences than there would be similarities actually. So with comparison contrast essay thesis, what you're going to do is you're going to present the subjects and indicate whether they will be compared, contrasted, or both. So what you want to do is I'm going to go over exactly how to create your thesis and how to create the aspects of your document, of your research paper or essay through the thesis. So the same points should be discussed for both subjects. And so if you're doing a thesis on online education and traditional classroom, you can use the formula that I gave you. That will help a little bit. But the information I'm going to be giving you today is probably going to help you a little bit better in terms of creating your thesis, because they're going to be anywhere from 2 to 4 aspects in your thesis that you're going to be focusing on, and you want to state that in your thesis. You don't have to do it in detail. You want it to be somewhat summarized in your thesis, but we'll go over that. Steps in creating a comparison and contrast essay. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use oranges and apples. You know that old age saying that you can't compare oranges and apples. Well, actually, I'm going to prove that wrong in this demonstration, because we are going to compare and contrast them both. In your essay, I would like you to follow the MLA documentation style. I know you're going to be learning other types of documentation styles, such as Chicago and APA, but for the purposes of this course only, you'll be learning the MLA. And the MLA documentation style, last week there was a demonstration given by an instructor, and he's actually physically in the video himself, actually embedded in the Word document, and he goes through the whole process with you of how to create MLA. It's one of the best videos I've seen out there, which is why I wanted to use it for demonstration, because you will have to create your essay in Microsoft Word. I will not accept it in any other format, because we're learning Microsoft Word, and that's part of the MLA documentation style. So if you also want to refer in your book as you're creating your essay to Chapter 13, which is Understanding the Essay, we reviewed that, I believe it was last week. And then Chapter 15 we're going to be doing this week, which is Comparison, Contrast, and Using Patterns of Organization. Use the PowerPoint presentations, and please read anytime that there is a chapter that is given to you through Moodle. That means you have to read that chapter. It's very, very important that you do that within that week, so you can get an idea and a background of the subjects that we're learning that week. The first step in any writing is called pre-writing, and we review that the first week of the term. So we don't have to review that in this demonstration, because you've already reviewed that and you've actually already used those pre-writing techniques when you created your paragraph. So you want to make sure and use those pre-writing techniques when you're using this essay. And I'm not going to review them, because you should be able to use brainstorming, concept mapping, and outlining by now. Those 3 things are essential before starting any essay or any type of writing assignment. Okay, so the document that I uploaded in Moodle is called How to Create a Comparison Contrast Essay Blank Template. So I'd like you to actually have this for this demonstration that I'm giving you now. So if you want to pause this podcast for a moment, go into Moodle and download that form and print it, or you can use it on your computer, either way. This way you can follow along with me. By now, you should have, because last week I gave you last week to take a look at what choices you want to use. So by now, you've probably looked at 1 or 2 of those choices and maybe did a little bit of research on both of them. And according to that research and how much research you've gained, it probably narrowed down your choice to what you're going to choose as the topics, I should say, that you're going to compare and contrast. So we're not going to use the 4, but you should have made that decision by now as to which one. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to use oranges and apples. So what we're going to do for our topics that we're going to compare and contrast, we're going to use topic 1 is going to be the oranges. Topic 2 is going to be. So we know now. So then we can go into our free write and start exploring ideas, developing plans, organizing, a structure for your writing. That's all part of the pre-write. There are 2 organizational structures. And there's a video actually embedded in Moodle last week, I believe, and it was an instructor, and he was given a demonstration on the differences of point-by-point and block method. And the reason why I included block method is just in case that in the future, if you do have English courses and you need to create comparison contrast through block method, you would have given that, you would have received, I should say, some background on block method. But for this essay, you're going to be using point by point, and I'm going to describe to you how it is that you create a point by point comparison contrast essay. Basically, what you're doing is you're taking your topics, you're getting 3 different things from those topics that you're going to pull from using your pre-writing techniques that you're going to focus on. You're going to compare and contrast those 3 elements. And I'm going to next show you. Okay, so block method, basically, each paragraph addresses one topic only from your pair of topics. And it includes the shared things that you've chosen to compare. For point by point, this is the graphic organizer that I'm going to ask you to use in the handout that I gave you. So the blank template, how to create a comparison contrast essay. This Venn diagram or graphic organizer, whichever you want to call it, is included in the package. So when you print out that package, it's going to be included in there, and I'm going to show you how to create and use this Venn diagram. Okay, so you should have your handout handy, and you should create the, you should take a look at the Venn diagram. Now the Venn diagram should look like this, and it looks like 2 circles, and of course they look like one is overlapping the other circle. Because one is overlapping the other circle, there's a gray area in between. That gray area is the overlapping part. So if you actually took one circle, you cut it out. You took another circle, you cut out that circle. You put the circles together, and you put the one circle on top of the other one halfway. On the left-hand side, in the orange area, are topics that you would compare. So because our 2 topics are oranges and apples, on the left-hand side, you would write oranges. On the right-hand side, you would write apples. There are 2 circles, and they should have 2 areas where you would have your differences. So on the left-hand side, above and below the word oranges, you have all of your differences of how it's different from apples. So as an example, oranges have a thick peel. So when you go to peel an orange, that orange is a little bit thicker than if you went ahead and you peeled an apple. You would have to probably use a knife or a peeler for an apple, but if you, the texture of the peels, apples have a thin peel and oranges have a thick peel. Now that's how they're different. The other thing is oranges are different than apples because they came to Europe from India. And just a little bit of background about it, oranges originated in South China and India, and they were carried to the Mediterranean area by Italian traders. So Europeans used citrus fruits for medicinal purposes and was adopted as a luscious fruit. A little bit of history there. Now for apples, the little bit of history there, Turkey is the center of diversity. 20% of Turkey's land is forest, where you'll find consumed with plant life. So with plant life, of course, it's rich in diversity of forest ecosystems. Therefore, with all of that forest, you can find an abundance of fruits, such as apples. So a little bit of difference in their history there. The other thing is that oranges are tropical, and apples are moderate to subtropical. So basically oranges are tropical, and that tropical is a region centered on the equator where it's the hottest place on earth, and that's where oranges thrive. Where apples can thrive in a subtropical means that the climate, which is hot, humid, with mild to cool winters. Apples actually stay crisp and juicy and maintain their color in hot temperatures. So moderate to subtropical are basically zones north and south of the tropic zone. So that's how they're a little bit different there. So now, since we've discussed the contrast, and you can see where it is in the two circles that the contrasts lie, we're now going to talk about how they are similar. The similarities go in the overlap portion where the circles overlap. Oranges and apples are both fruits. They both can grow on trees, and they both give juice. So if you squeeze an orange and you squeeze an apple, juice comes out of an apple. If you squeeze an orange, juice comes out of an orange. This is the Venn diagram that you're going to be using for your choices. So the main ideas, now we're going to take our Venn diagram that we just used for our choices. We're going to look at that, and we're going to look it over and review it. And we're going to say to ourselves, after we've reviewed it, we're going to say to ourselves, what can we take from that information that I would like to expand on? So after looking at our Venn diagram, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on 3 areas. And the 3 areas are called aspect 1, aspect 2, and aspect 3. These are going to be the main ideas, basically the controlling ideas of that particular paragraph. So for aspect 1, whatever we come up with as the first thing we want to focus on is going to go into our body paragraph 1, which is the paragraph after the introductory paragraph. And the reason why I put compare, contrast down is because the first thing that we're going to do is compare that aspect, and then the next thing we're going to do is contrast it. So you can do like the first half of your paragraph comparing it, and then the second half contrasting that aspect. Aspect number 2 is when we come up with our second idea of what we want to talk about. That will go in our body paragraph 2, which is going to be the third paragraph of your essay. And then the aspect 3, and these are the things that we're going to come up with. It's not given to us. We're going to take that from our pre-writing, from our Venn diagram, and then we're going to put that in the 4th paragraph of our essay. So let's go ahead and think about what we're going to choose as our aspects. Okay. So given the information that we've researched about oranges and apples and using our Venn diagram, when we were talking about how they, they can thrive in what type of tropical environment, then the first thing we're going to talk about is how they're grown, how oranges and apples are grown. And the next thing is how they can be processed. And we were talking about apples. When you squeeze it, it becomes juice. When we squeeze an orange, it becomes juice. So we're going to look at both of them to see how they can be processed, meaning that how can their format be changed from an actual fruit to a juice. And then the third thing, we were talking about the peels, where the orange is thick and the apple's thin. One of the third aspect that we can talk about in our essay is their appearance, how they look. So those are the 3 aspects that we're going to use moving forward now. The essay structure. So your introductory paragraph, you always start out with an introductory paragraph, and we've reviewed that in the past and how to create an introductory paragraph, so we don't really need to review that. But body paragraph 1, 2, and 3, typically in an essay structure, this is what you have. Now, of course, if you're creating a 10 to 20 page essay, you're going to have a lot more than 3 body paragraphs, but typically in anywhere from a 2 to 5 page essay, this is typically the structure that you would use. You always end your essay with a conclusion paragraph, and you always have to make sure that you submit your works cited page, because in some cases, if you do not hand in your works cited page with your document, you will be accused of plagiarizing, and in some cases that is a case for dismissal or expulsion in some schools. We don't normally do that in a developmental environment or developmental course, because typically the notion is that you're in a learning stage in developmental. But if you're going to hand in your paper, make sure and hand in a works cited, because you might as well not hand in your paper if you don't have a works cited, because the worst case scenario would be you would get a 0. But if you don't hand in your works cited page, you would get a 0 and you would be accused of plagiarizing. So very, very important. Drafting, of course, the first thing that you want to do is you want to create your first draft. So since now that we have our aspects, we can go ahead and focus on our body paragraphs. Now, this is the assumption that you've already created your introductory paragraph, and again, we don't have to go over that. Just whatever you do, just make the first sentence of your introductory paragraph something that's going to draw your readers in, something very interesting. Get them to be interested in what you have to say in your essay. And then always, of course, remember, I know I've said this many times in the past, the last sentence in your introductory paragraph should be your thesis. Now, the thesis is going to be pulled from the aspects. We'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, your introduction paragraph. Paragraph 1. Your paragraph 1 in your essay research paper is always, always going to be your introductory paragraph. When it should be anywhere from 5 to 8 sentences, but of course you can always ask your instructor how they feel, or how she or he feels about the amount of sentences that you would have in your introductory paragraph. You can always double check on that just to make sure. But in your thesis, you want to make sure and note those 3 aspects that we just discussed in the last slide. So in your thesis statement, that is the last sentence in your introductory paragraph, you are going to mention how apples and oranges are grown, how they can be processed, and what their appearance is, very, very briefly. Those are the 3 aspects, and you have to mention those in your thesis, because remember, your thesis is the driver in the car. The thesis is the driver in your essay. So whatever you put in your thesis, you have to follow up with that in your essay. And when I say you want to start it out with an anecdote, some kind of funny story, or just interesting a fact, it doesn't have to be something serious. I mean, you can do something personal, you can make a joke, you can actually start out with a question. And again, the thesis is the last sentence in your introductory paragraph. Okay, so body paragraph 1. If you follow along in the handout that I gave you, you'll see that your body paragraph 1 is on page 3 in the handout. So if you follow along, you can actually write this in there, so you can get an idea of how to start your... Okay, so the second paragraph in your essay is called body paragraph 1. You start it out with a topic sentence. You get major idea sentences from that topic sentence, and then you do a transition sentence at the end. If you're transitioning to the next paragraph and still discussing some things, you can use a transition. If you're going to complete discussing your points in that paragraph, you can use a conclusion sentence. And again, you can check to see how many sentences you can do overall. That may be stated on the rubric. I know for our rubric for this particular essay that you're creating for comparison contrast, you do have the amount of sentences that you need to have in your body paragraphs on the rubric. So if you are told that you need 8 and you only have 6, you're going to get points deducted. So please take a look at that rubric that is also attached to the assignment sheet that I uploaded in Moodle. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to take a look at our aspect for number 1. So when we were talking earlier about our aspect, we were talking about aspect number 1 and how they're grown. We're going to pull some similarities and differences from that aspect. We're going to take those similarities and differences, and then we're going to create our topic sentence. And then we can always finish later and do a transition sentence later, or now, if you don't want to do it now, you can always wait till later. Here is an example of how you can, and you can write this again, you can write this in your handout, because this is something that you're going to have to hand in, and you can please do print 2 copies, because this copy here is just ones that we're going to be working on, you're going to be doodling on and writing notes on and everything. But the one that you're going to hand in to me, I would like you to hand that in to me based on your topics, after you've learned and I've demonstrated how to actually create this using oranges and apples as an example. Okay, so we talked about, from our Venn diagram, we chose how, with the first aspect, how they're grown. Okay, so we're going to take that aspect and we're going to say, okay, let's look at the similarities of that aspect. Now let's look at the differences. And we can do that before topic sentences, because of course you can take the information from your details and put in your topics, or you can just create your topic sentence from your aspects. So the aspect is how apples and oranges are grown. We can expand on that in our topic sentence. Apples and oranges differ in the way they're grown. Yes. Okay. Now our details have to relate back to that topic sentence. As an example, the similar way that they're grown are apples and oranges are both tree fruits, so they're grown on trees. And they're similar in the way that they're grown commercially in large orchards. So you have an apple orchard, or you can have an orange orchard. Those are 2 similarities on how they're grown. Now they're also different in the way that they're grown as well, because oranges and apples actually have different climates that they're grown. Apples are grown in warm and cool climates. Oranges need tropical temperatures to produce. So you actually now have your body paragraph 1 done. All you'd have to do is just type that up and you're done. Of course, you do need a transition sentence, and I left that blank because I think that's something that you can maybe come up with in your own mind and it's called transition sentence. It's actually a conclusion sentence, which concludes your paragraph, and that goes by your topic sentence. You're basically concluding your paragraph, kind of stating your topic sentence, just not restate it verbatim. All right, so that's the first aspect. Now we're going to look at body paragraph 2, which is the 3rd paragraph in your essay. The second aspect that we talked about a few slides ago, when we were talking about our main ideas after looking at the Venn diagram, is how they're processed. Okay, so the topic sentence based on how they're processed, we could say something like, we don't have to actually say this, but we can say something like, apples and oranges differ in the way that they are processed. Great. You're leaving it open to discuss similarities and differences. You're not adding too much detail there to your topic sentence. You don't normally have to, but you can without using too much detail. So the way that they're processed, we can look at them and we can say, okay, well, what can we make from apples? What can we make from oranges? How are they similar? Well, juice can be made when pressing the apples and squeezing the orange. So, of course, when you squeeze apples, you get apple juice. When you squeeze oranges, you get orange juice. That's how they're similar. Also, not only can you get juice, but you can also get sauce from oranges and apples as well. Sauce can be made by processing the organs into orange juice and then pressing the apples into applesauce. So you can get a sauce from both of them, is how they're similar. Now they're different in that when you press apples, you don't get any type of additional ingredients in there. It's just a basic juice. But however, when you squeeze and create juice from oranges, you're going to get another ingredient called pulp, which is how they're different. And also, when orange juice is squeezed from oranges, it contains bits of maybe rind, where apples you don't get that when you press apples. So that is your 3rd paragraph, and what you're going to be discussing. Okay, so body paragraph 3 is your 4th paragraph in your essay, and that is going to be, and you can do the same thing as you did the first aspect, the second aspect is their appearance. So just as a reminder here, the fourth and the fifth paragraphs in your essay, body paragraph 3 is actually your fourth paragraph. Body paragraph 5 is actually your body paragraph 4, if you have 4 body paragraphs. But actually, in this particular case, we only have 3. Therefore, the fifth paragraph in your essay is going to be the concluding or the closing paragraph. And basically what that does is just reiterate all of the things that we're talking about now and restate your thesis. Okay, so going back to our third aspect, I just wanted to put that little reminder in there so you know where your paragraphs lie in your essay. The third thing that we talked about in our main points for our aspect is their appearance. Apples and oranges, their appearance. So what we can talk about for our main idea topic sentence in that particular paragraph, which is usually the first sentence, but you don't have to have it in the first sentence. But anyway, we're going to start out our paragraph saying apples and oranges are very different looking fruits. Great. We just opened up what we're going to talk about in that particular paragraph. And what we're going to talk about in the paragraph is how they're different in their appearance. So an apple and an orange can be peeled in order to eat it. That's how they're similar. You can peel an apple, you can peel an orange. And the darker the color that the fruit is, the more ripe it is. So the darker the orange is, probably a little bit sweeter and ripe, as well as the apples. Now the differences are apples have a red skin and it's thinner than an orange and shinier. Oranges, on the other hand, are orange in color with a thick, bumpy skin. So that's how they're different. Okay, and then in your transition sentence, you're basically going to end your paragraph with a conclusion sentence, a sentence that ends it. You also have to note here that in your mind, as you're writing this, you're transitioning actually to your concluding paragraph. So this is the last paragraph. This is body paragraph 4. We're done, and now we're ready to start our conclusion paragraph. Okay. So this is something that you can think about in your concluding paragraph. I did not put one in here because I think this is something that you can be very creative on your own in creating. But what I did want to really focus on in this particular demonstration is how to create your body paragraphs, because they're very, very important. But in your concluding sentence, you can really be creative. You can do an evaluation. You can talk about maybe future developments, just summarize all 3 of those aspects, basically, and how they're grown, how they're processed, what they look like, just in a summary format. Again, when you create this essay, you want to make sure that you are going to use the MLA, the Modern Language Association. And again, I can't stress enough to tell you to please go back last week and look at that video, review that video of the man standing in the Microsoft Word document. It really, really helps, because if you're working in Microsoft Word, he actually takes you step by step how to create your MLA. Just in your introductory section, just please make sure that you do have your introductory heading when you hand in your MLA, and don't do anything special to the font. It's all the same font. And please also make sure that you have a page number. And you can also look at the MLA handout for reference. Your works cited page, we're going to take a look at that next week. You can use EasyBib, easybib.com. EasyBib basically is a website that it walks you step by step how to create a works cited page, and I'm going to have a podcast on that as well, probably sometime next week. It should always be the last page of your document, and works cited should be at the top of the page, centered with no special font. But if you do use EasyBib, you don't have to worry about the format, because it automatically creates the works cited page for you automatically. So again, just make sure you remember you have two different citations. Please do not hand in your essay without them. And here's just some additional information how to create the works cited, which is actually something that you really don't need to know if you are going to create it in EasyBib, but looking forward in your English courses in the next few terms, you want to check with your instructor to see if you can use EasyBib. Some instructors are okay with it, some are not. Depends on the instructor. I definitely do like the EasyBib because I think it makes the nightmare situation of creating works cited so much easier. It streamlines it, it creates it for you, it walks you step by step. So please make sure and hand in your first draft typed by June 11, which is week 9. This gives me time to take a look at it and edit it. Send it back to you with a rubric, so you can look at your rubric to see where you need to strengthen your essay. And I will send that back to you marked, graded in email. You can take a look at it and see what you need to do in order to make those edits and make those changes. So when you do submit your final draft in week 11, no later than June 23rd, then it gives you a better idea of what you need to work on, rather than just handing me your draft at the end and not knowing what you did wrong. So I'm going to give you a chance to take a look at it and rewrite it, rework it, and then hand it back to me with all of your mistakes taken care of. That's called editing, and that is what I'll be doing for you. So again, good writers know that you don't sit down, write something, and consider that your final draft and hand it in. You have to go back. You have to keep going back. In some cases, authors have to keep going back hundreds of times to make changes to their work. And just because you feel like you have to go back and make changes to your work doesn't make you a bad writer at all. It makes you actually a very good one. So again, when you do the proofreading, have somebody proofread it before you send it. Before you send the final draft. You don't necessarily have to for the first draft, because that's the reason why you're handing in the first draft, is to get that editing feedback. But before you submit your final, please make sure and have another set of eyes look at it. It's called proofreading. So plagiarism, whether it's intentional or unintentional, which in my experience, in most cases it's unintentional, which is why a developmental course is excellent in that it teaches you how not to plagiarize. It teaches you not to plagiarize because some colleges and universities take it very, very serious. In fact, they call it, some of them call it an academic crime. I don't call it an academic crime. You will not ever hear me say that, because we're in a learning environment. But anytime anyone has said anything at all and published it, it is their work. Just like you would not walk up to someone and take their possession, you would not take their words also. Just as if you were an author and you publish something, whether it's a book, an article, you certainly would not want somebody else using your words, whether intentional or unintentional, and taking credit for it when you did all the hard work in publishing that material. Okay, so good luck creating your comparison contrast essay. Don't hesitate to email me if you have any questions, and I'll be looking forward to your first draft on June 11, 2017. Thank you.